Garden. We're here today to read One Good Deed. One Good Deed is a story written by Terry Fields and illustrated by Deborah Melman. One Good Deed. Even on a sunny day, Lancaster Street seems dark and gloomy. Neighbors did not smile at each other, or talk to each other, or help each other. Oh, it sounds like an icky neighborhood. But one day, as Jake climbed his mulberry tree to pick its ripe fruit, he saw old Mrs. Thompson outside her house next door. Suddenly, he had a thought he'd never thought before. I bet she's sad she can't climb trees. I could take her some of these delicious mulberries. When Jake arrived, Mrs. Thompson was surprised. She was delighted. She had enough fruit to make 2 mulberry pies. Then she had a thought she'd never thought before. I loved getting these mulberries. I bet Mr. Riley next door would like one of my pies. When Mrs. Thompson arrived, Mr. Riley was surprised. Mr. Riley was delighted. As he ate the delicious pie, he looked out the window and watched the kids next door playing ball. Suddenly, he saw a ball land on the roof of his garage. Then he had a thought he'd never thought before. I bet I could help them. I could take my ladder and get their ball. When Mr. Riley handed them back their ball, Jeffrey and Joshua were surprised. They were delighted. As they tossed it back and forth, they saw Mr. Lee hobbling on crutches to his front door. Then they had a thought they'd never thought before. Mr. Lee can't rake the leaves in his yard, but we could. When the boys arrived with their rakes, Mr. Lee was surprised. Mr. Lee was delighted. Soon they were joined by Sammy Cohen from next door carrying a rake. My computer is broken, so I can't finish my homework. I'll help you rake. Then Mr. Lee had a thought he'd never thought before. I'm good at computers. Maybe I could fix Sammy's computer. When Mr. Lee arrived, the Cohens were surprised. The Cohens were delighted, and before you knew it, the computer was up and running again. When Mrs. Cohen sat down to check her email, she looked out her window and saw Ashley from next door riding a rusty old bike. Then she had a thought she'd never thought before. We have a practically new bike that Sammy has outgrown. It would be perfect for Ashley. When Mrs. Cohen arrived with the new bike, Ashley was surprised. Ashley was delighted. She rode her bike around the neighborhood, waving and smiling and calling hello to all of her neighbors. The neighbors were surprised. The neighbors were delighted. Everyone waved and smiled right back. Soon, even on gray days, Lancaster Street seemed warm and sunny. How had that happened? No one knew. Not even Jake realized that it had all begun with a basket of mulberries and one good deed. Thanks for tuning in for One Good Deed. What's one good deed you could do today?